What if I told you there's a vegetable that tastes exactly like oysters, grows like a weed in almost any soil, and was once so popular that every single American farm grew it? A vegetable so common that your great-great-grandparents ate it multiple times a week, but today, almost nobody even knows it exists? This isn't some exotic superfood from a faraway land. This is salsify, a humble root vegetable that was once called the oyster plant, because when you cook it, it genuinely tastes like fresh seafood. And here's the crazy part. In 1900, salsify was everywhere. It was in every garden catalog, every farm, every kitchen table across America. But then, something happened. It vanished. Almost overnight, this incredible plant disappeared from American gardens and dinner plates. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what salsify is, why it tastes like oysters, how ridiculously easy it is to grow, and most importantly, why big agriculture wanted you to forget it ever existed. Stick around because number 6 on my growing tips list is a secret that'll make your salsify harvest twice as big. And that bonus tip at the end, it's going to blow your mind about what you can do with the parts of this plant that most people throw away. Before we dive in, let me tell you a quick story. About 5 years ago, I was reading through an old seed catalog from 1895, and I kept seeing this vegetable called vegetable oyster listed right alongside carrots, parsnips, and turnips. I'd never heard of it. So I did some digging, found some heirloom seeds, planted them in my garden, and when harvest time came, I couldn't believe what I'd been missing my entire life. The moment I tasted my first bite of cooked salsify, I understood why every farm in America used to grow this plant. It was delicious, unique, and absolutely nothing like any other vegetable I'd ever eaten. And then I got angry. Angry because this knowledge was stolen from us. Angry because our grandparents knew about this plant. But somehow the information never made it down to our generation. That's what this video is about. I'm here to give you back the knowledge that was taken from you. Knowledge about real food, grown by real people, that doesn't need chemical fertilizers, fancy equipment, or a degree in agriculture. Salsify is proof that the best foods in the world are often the simplest, the easiest, and the most forgotten. So if you're ready to grow something that'll impress your dinner guests, save you money at the grocery store, and connect you to a piece of forgotten American history, you're in exactly the right place. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because I share gardening secrets like this every single week. Secrets that help you grow smarter, eat better, and become more independent. Your support means everything, so thank you. Now, let's dive in. What exactly is salsify? And why does it taste like oysters? Let's start with the basics. Salsify is a root vegetable that looks a lot like a long, thin parsnip or a skinny white carrot. It grows underground, just like carrots and beets. And it has a mild, slightly sweet flavor when it's raw. But here's where things get interesting. When you cook salsify, whether you boil it, roast it, or saute it, something magical happens. The flavor transforms into something that tastes remarkably similar to fresh oysters. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a vegetable taste like seafood? It sounds impossible, right? But it's true. The cooked flavor has that briny, slightly sweet, delicate taste that you get from oysters. It's not exactly the same. You're not going to fool a seafood expert. But it's close enough that people in the 1800s and early 1900s called it the poor man's oyster, or vegetable oyster. The scientific reason for this has to do with the unique combination of minerals and compounds in the plant. Salsify absorbs trace minerals from the soil, and when you cook it, those minerals create a flavor profile that's similar to seafood. It's one of nature's amazing tricks, a landlocked vegetable that somehow tastes like the ocean. There are actually two main types of salsify that were commonly grown in America. The first is white salsify, which has a pale, cream-colored root and is the traditional variety. The second is black salsify, also called scorzonera, which has a dark brown or black skin but white flesh inside. Both taste similar, but black salsify is slightly sweeter and has a more intense oyster flavor. In 1900, you could walk into any farm in America and find rows and rows of salsify growing alongside the potatoes, carrots, and turnips. It was that common. Seed catalogs from that era featured salsify prominently, with descriptions like the most delicious and nutritious root vegetable and a must-have for every kitchen garden. Cookbooks from the Victorian era included dozens of salsify recipes, salsify fritters, creamed salsify, salsify soup, and even mock oyster stew made entirely from this plant. But somewhere between 1920 and 1950, salsify started to disappear. Today, you won't find it in most grocery stores, you won't see it at farmers markets, and most gardeners under the age of 70 have never even heard of it. So what happened? Why did this incredibly popular vegetable vanish from American agriculture? The answer is simple, but it's going to make you angry. Industrial agriculture happened. As farming became more mechanized and focused on mass production, companies started pushing a narrow selection of crops that were easy to harvest, ship, and store. Crops like carrots, potatoes, and onions became the standard because they could be grown on massive scales and shipped across the country without spoiling. Salsify, on the other hand, doesn't store as long as carrots. It's a bit more delicate. It requires hand harvesting because the roots are long and can break easily. And most importantly, it doesn't fit into the industrial food system because people can grow it themselves, easily, without needing to buy seeds from big companies every single year. Salsify is a biennial, which means if you let it go to seed, you'll have free seeds forever. Big agriculture didn't want you growing your own food. They wanted you dependent on grocery stores, dependent on their seeds, and dependent on their system. So crops like salsify, crops that gave people independence and food security, were quietly phased out and forgotten. But here's the good news. You can bring it back, right now, in your own backyard. Why every American farm grew salsify in 1900. Let me paint you a picture of what farming looked like in 1900. Back then, most families grew their own food. They didn't have grocery stores on every corner. They didn't have refrigerators or freezers. They needed crops that were easy to grow, productive, nutritious, and most importantly, crops that could be stored through the winter. Salsify checked every single box. First, it was incredibly easy to grow. You didn't need special soil, fancy fertilizers, or constant attention. You just planted the seeds in spring, kept them watered for the first few weeks, and then let them do their thing. Salsify is drought tolerant once established, which meant it could survive dry summers without constant irrigation. Second, salsify was productive. One packet of seeds could produce dozens of long, thick roots. A small 10-foot row of salsify could feed a family through the winter. That kind of productivity was essential for families who depended on their gardens for survival. Third, salsify was nutritious. It's high in fiber, potassium, calcium, and vitamins B, 6, and C. It's also low in calories and naturally gluten-free. For families who didn't have access to fresh seafood or expensive meat, salsify provided important nutrients at a fraction of the cost. But here's the part that made salsify truly special. It stored incredibly well in the ground. Unlike carrots or beets, which needed to be harvested and stored in a root cellar, salsify could stay in the garden all winter long. In fact, frost actually improved the flavor. Families would simply leave the roots in the ground, covered with a thick layer of mulch, and dig them up as needed throughout the winter. It was like having a free, fresh vegetable available even in the middle of January. And then, there was the taste. In an era when most people ate the same basic foods day after day, potatoes, turnips, cabbage, beans, salsify offered something completely different. It added variety to the dinner table. It made meals more interesting. And for families who lived far from the coast and couldn't afford fresh oysters, salsify gave them a taste of the ocean without ever leaving their farm. Cookbooks from the late 1800s and early 1900s are filled with salsify recipes. Women would prepare it in dozens of different ways: boiled and buttered, creamed with white sauce, battered and fried into fritters, or cooked into a thick, creamy soup that tasted just like oyster chowder. It was versatile, delicious, and reliable. But more than that, salsify represented something important: self-sufficiency. Families who grew salsify didn't need to depend on expensive imported foods. They didn't need to worry about running out of vegetables in the winter. They had control over their own food supply, and that meant security, independence, and freedom. That's why every farm grew it. It wasn't just about taste, it was about survival. How to grow salsify. It really does grow like a weed. Now let's talk about how you can grow salsify in your own garden. And trust me, this is one of the easiest vegetables you'll ever grow. If you can grow carrots, you can grow salsify. In fact, salsify is even more forgiving than carrots because it tolerates poor soil, drought, and neglect better than most root vegetables. Step 1. Choose your variety. There are two main types of salsify you can grow. White salsify, Tragopogon porifolius, is the traditional American variety. It has a cream-colored root and a mild oyster flavor. Black Salsify Scorsonera hispanica has a dark outer skin but white flesh inside, and it has a slightly stronger, sweeter flavor. Both are excellent, so choose whichever one appeals to you. You can even grow both and compare them. Step 2. Prepare your soil. Salsify grows best in loose, well-drained soil that's free of rocks and clumps. The roots grow long, sometimes 8 to 12 inches or more, so you want to give them room to stretch out. If you have heavy clay soil, consider growing Salsify in raised beds or loosening the soil deeply with a broad fork before planting. Here's the good news. Salsify doesn't need rich, fertile soil. In fact, it grows just fine in average soil with no added fertilizer. That's one of the reasons it was so popular on old-time farms. It didn't require expensive amendments or constant feeding. It just grew. Step 3. Plant your seeds. Salsify seeds are best planted directly into the garden in early spring, as soon as the soil can be worked. In most areas, that's March or April. If you live in a warmer climate, you can also plant Salsify in late summer or early fall for a winter harvest. Plant the seeds about 1/2 inch deep and 2 to 3 inches apart in rows. Space your rows about 12 to 18 inches apart. Salsify seeds can take 10 to 14 days to germinate, so be patient. Keep the soil evenly moist during germination, and once the seedlings emerge, you can thin them to about 4 to 6 inches apart. Step 4. Water and wait. Once your Salsify seedlings are established, they require very little care. Water them during dry spells, but don't overwater. Salsify is naturally drought tolerant, and too much water can actually cause the roots to split or become woody. You don't need to fertilize Salsify. In fact, adding too much nitrogen can cause the plants to produce lots of leafy growth above ground but small roots below. Just let them grow naturally, and they'll do their thing. Step 5. Mulch for winter harvest. Here's one of the coolest things about Salsify. You can leave it in the ground all winter and harvest it as needed. After the first frost, cover your Salsify rows with a thick layer of straw, leaves, or mulch. This insulates the soil and keeps it from freezing solid, which makes it easier to dig up roots even in the middle of winter. As the weather gets colder, the starches in the roots convert to sugars, which makes the flavor sweeter and more delicate. That's why many old-time gardeners preferred to harvest Salsify after a few hard frosts. Step 6. Harvest when ready. Salsify is ready to harvest about 120 days after planting, which is usually in late fall. To harvest, use a garden fork or spade to loosen the soil around the roots, then gently pull them up. Be careful, the roots are long and can break easily if you're too rough. Don't worry if you don't harvest all of your Salsify in the fall. Any roots you leave in the ground will overwinter just fine, and you can dig them up the following spring before they start to flower. In fact, some gardeners intentionally leave a few plants in the ground to go to seed, which gives them free seeds for next year's crop. Bonus growing tip: the secret to bigger roots. Here's the secret I promised earlier. If you want really thick, long Salsify roots, here's what you do. About halfway through the growing season, usually around July or August, stop watering your Salsify completely. Let the soil dry out for a week or two. This might sound crazy, but here's what happens. When the plants experience a period of drought, they respond by sending their roots deeper into the soil in search of water. This forces the roots to grow longer and thicker. Then, when you start watering again, the roots swell up with moisture and become plump and tender. This technique is called stress irrigation, and it's an old-time trick that farmers use to grow bigger, better root vegetables. It works beautifully with Salsify, parsnips, and carrots. How to cook Salsify, and why it really does taste like oysters. Now let's talk about the best part, eating Salsify. If you've never tasted it before, you're in for a real treat. The flavor is mild, slightly sweet, and when cooked, it transforms into that distinctive oyster-like taste that made this plant famous. Preparing Salsify. Before you cook Salsify, you need to clean and peel it. The roots often have a slightly sticky sap when you cut into them, which is normal. Some people like to peel the roots before cooking, while others prefer to boil them first and then slip the skins off afterward. Either way works. Here's a pro tip. As you peel or cut Salsify, drop the pieces into a bowl of water with a little lemon juice or vinegar. This prevents the roots from turning brown due to oxidation. Classic Salsify recipes 1. Boiled and buttered Salsify. This is the simplest way to prepare Salsify, and it's absolutely delicious. Cut the peeled roots into 2 to 3 inch pieces and boil them in salted water for 15 to 20 minutes until they're tender. Drain them, toss them with butter, salt, and pepper, and serve. The oyster flavor really shines through with this simple preparation. 2. Creamed Salsify. This was a Victorian-era favorite. Boil the Salsify until tender, then drain and cut into bite-sized pieces. Make a simple white sauce with butter, flour, and milk. Season it with salt, pepper, and a pinch of nutmeg, and pour it over the Salsify. Serve it hot over toast or alongside roasted meat. It's comfort food at its finest. 3. Salsify fritters, mock oyster fritters. This is where Salsify really earns its oyster plant nickname. Boil the Salsify until tender, then mash it with a fork. Mix it with beaten eggs, flour, salt, pepper, and a little chopped parsley. Form the mixture into small patties and fry them in butter or oil until golden brown on both sides. These taste remarkably similar to oyster fritters, and they're absolutely addictive. 4. Roasted Salsify. Cut the peeled roots into long strips, toss them with olive oil, salt, and pepper, and roast them in a hot oven, 400 degrees Fahrenheit, for 25 to 30 minutes until they're golden and caramelized. Roasting brings out the natural sweetness and gives them a slightly crispy exterior. It's a great side dish that even kids will love. 5. Salsify soup, mock oyster stew. This is an old-fashioned recipe that's incredibly satisfying. Boil chopped Salsify in chicken or vegetable broth until tender. Add cream, butter, and a pinch of thyme. Season with salt and pepper. The result is a rich, creamy soup that tastes like oyster chowder but costs a fraction of the price. Why the oyster flavor? You're probably wondering, does it really taste like oysters, or is that just hype? Here's the honest truth. When you cook Salsify, especially when you boil or cream it, the flavor has a distinctive briny, slightly sweet taste that's very similar to oysters. It's not an exact match, but it's close enough that if you served it to someone without telling them what it was, they'd be surprised. The texture is also similar, soft, tender, and slightly silky. That's why it was such a popular substitute for oysters in the 1800s and early 1900s, especially for families who lived far from the coast or couldn't afford fresh seafood. Why Salsify disappeared, and why you should bring it back. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. If Salsify was so popular, so easy to grow, and so delicious, why did it disappear? The answer comes down to 3 things: industrialization, convenience, and corporate control. First, industrialization. As American agriculture shifted from small family farms to large-scale industrial operations, the focus changed from diversity to efficiency. Companies wanted crops that could be grown on thousands of acres, harvested by machines, and shipped across the country without spoiling. Salsify didn't fit that model. It required hand harvesting because the roots are delicate. It didn't store as long as potatoes or carrots. And it wasn't in high enough demand to justify large-scale production. Second, convenience. As refrigerators and freezers became common in American homes, people started relying on frozen and canned foods instead of fresh from the garden vegetables. Grocery stores began carrying a smaller and smaller selection of produce, focusing on the most profitable and easy-to-ship items. Salsify, being a bit more unusual and requiring more preparation, fell out of favor. Third, corporate control. Seed companies and agribusiness corporations wanted to control the food supply. They pushed hybrid seeds that couldn't be saved and replanted. They promoted crops that required chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Salsify, being an heirloom crop that self-seeds and requires almost no inputs, didn't fit into their profit model, so they stopped promoting it. They stopped including it in seed catalogs, and within a generation or two, it was forgotten. But here's the thing, Salsify never actually disappeared. It's been kept alive by small-scale gardeners, seed savers, and heritage food enthusiasts who recognized its value. And today, thanks to the internet and the growing interest in heirloom vegetables, Salsify is making a comeback. And that's where you come in. Growing Salsify is an act of resistance. Here's something I want you to understand. When you grow Salsify in your garden, you're not just growing a vegetable. You're participating in an act of resistance against a food system that wants you dependent, disconnected, and powerless. Every time you plant a seed that's been saved for generations, you're saying no to corporate control. Every time you harvest food from your own backyard, you're saying no to grocery store monopolies. Every time you cook a meal with ingredients you grew yourself, you're saying no to a system that profits from your dependence. Salsify represents something bigger than just food. It represents knowledge, tradition, and independence. It represents a time when families had control over their own food supply. It represents a way of life that's been stolen from us, but that we can reclaim. One seed, one plant, one harvest at a time. So when you grow Salsify, you're not just growing a forgotten vegetable. You're reclaiming lost knowledge. You're honoring your ancestors who grew this plant on their farms. And you're building a future where you and your family have real food security, real independence, and real freedom. Bonus tip: the secret part of Salsify. Nobody talks about all right. Here's the bonus tip I promised. Most people think of Salsify as just a root vegetable. But here's what almost nobody knows. The young shoots and flower buds are also edible, and they're absolutely delicious. In early spring, before you harvest your Salsify roots, the plants will send up young shoots. These shoots taste like a cross between asparagus and artichoke, and you can harvest them when they're 4 to 6 inches tall. Simply snap them off at the base, steam or sauté them, and enjoy. Later in the season, Salsify produces beautiful purple or yellow flowers, depending on the variety. Before the flowers open, the buds can be harvested and cooked just like artichoke hearts. They have a mild, slightly sweet flavor and a tender texture. You can pickle them, sauté them in butter, or add them to salads. And here's the really cool part. If you let some of your Salsify plants go to seed, they'll self-sow and come back year after year. That means free food, free seeds, and a self-sustaining supply of this incredible vegetable with almost no effort on your part. So you're not just getting roots, you're getting shoots, buds, flowers, and seeds. One plant gives you multiple harvests throughout the year. That's the kind of efficiency and productivity that our ancestors understood, but that we've lost in our modern food system. Final thoughts. Bring Salsify back to America. Salsify is proof that the best foods are often the simplest, the easiest, and the most forgotten. It's proof that our ancestors knew things we've lost. And it's proof that we don't need industrial agriculture, chemical fertilizers, or corporate seed companies to grow incredible food. All we need is a packet of seeds, a patch of soil, and the willingness to try something different. So here's my challenge to you. This spring, plant Salsify in your garden. Give it a try. Taste it for yourself. And when you do, remember that you're not just eating a vegetable, you're eating a piece of American history. You're tasting what your great-great-grandparents ate on their farms. You're connecting to a tradition that goes back hundreds of years. And most importantly, you're taking back control of your own food supply. If this video inspired you, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Drop a comment below telling me if you've ever heard of Salsify or if you're going to try growing it this year. Share this video with someone who needs to know about this forgotten vegetable. And remember, every seed you plant is a step toward independence, security, and freedom. Thanks for watching, garden friend. Now get out there and grow something incredible. I'll see you in the next one.